here comes the devil. Oh, here comes the devil. Oh, here comes the devil.
Oh, the devil with the devil, says I.
Shh, look out for the devil. Look out for the devil. Look out for the devil.
Oh, the devil with the devil, says I. You're so afraid of old man Satan. Now, why don't you stop your hesitating? You're gonna be a long time dead, so the devil with the devil, says I. You're always giving me the dickens, telling me that life's no easy pickings. But just as long as I have fun, why, the devil with the devil, says I. You can have your social teas and bingo for your fun. But the things I like to do, you stop me one by one. Now even if you make me stronger, that ain't gonna make me live no longer. So even if I go to shh, the devil with the devil, says I.
Look out for the devil, look out for the devil.
Oh, the devil with the devil, says I.
Here we are, and we are here with a surprise, ladies and gentlemen. My new book is here. Wonderful new book. Christy, what's up?
You're yelling in my ear.
Oh, sorry. I'm very excited because this book, guys, is a labor of love. Always for Cool Superficial, a small publishing house with me and Christy. And it is a book that is gonna really raise a lot of questions because it's a unique perspective on the Epstein case. For years, we had people talking about Jeffrey Epstein. Now we have Prince Andy stripped of all titles. He can basically call himself Prince only in his own house. That's okay. But where is he going to go and live? There is even the titles of the tabloids in England, like Sarah Ferguson, homeless. Yeah, sure.
Maybe they'll go and live in council estates. That would be funny.
Okay, so this book, guys, is the most comprehensive and unique, like I said, the word unique needs to be used this time, because the study about a sect that nobody wants to mention, everybody talks about IPAC, everybody talks about the Jewish influence in American politics, but nobody talks about the people who are behind the whole thing. And so when you know that Leslie Wexner, yes, the guy, Leslie,
Les Wexner,
the
Victoria's Secret man.
Yes, he's a guy who is actually the biggest financer of IPAC. So wake up, guys. But in any case, this story starts a few centuries ago with Sabbatai Zevi, and we have Jacob Frank. But in my book, I talk about also why are all these pedophiles treated in a special way in Israel? Why is Israel hated by half of the world? And this book explains all this because this book explains that the first victims of the Sabbatai and Frankists are actually the Jews, the Jewish communities around the world, as well as the people living in Israel today. But it gives also an explanation of what Jeffrey Epstein really was, because Jeffrey Epstein himself was a puppet with some puppet masters behind the scene. So I hope that people really understand the importance and the relevance of this book. In the meantime, welcome to the Leo Zagami Show. We were not with you last Saturday. We were too busy finishing up a book.
I was just in the room. I would say like in between like editing, I would come back out, get a drink of water, and I'd say, okay, I'm going back in. And then I would go back in because everything had to be perfect. So I tried, everything can't be perfect because we just do our best here at the Leo Zagami Show. Nobody is perfect, but we do our best.
We do our best. And we need your help because we are at the end of the month. There's a new month starting. and people are not really buying books anymore. It's a tragedy. It's not because this new book is not successful.
Yeah.
There has been this trend in the last few months of a decline in sales in books.
I think it has to do with the state of the economy. But I mean, we're suffering the state of the economy as well. So I mean, you want us to sit here in front of you and do a show, yet we are paying the same bills that you are. We are not privileged individuals, so we
might look good, but that's
and everything is old. But anyway, it's just like we're making a living here. That's why we're doing it. We're coming here. People need to buy the book. I mean, and so like this month we had like. It's been $600 in sales this month, and that's it. Maybe $700 now with this new book. But like the sales on this new book aren't that great either. But I do realize it's the end of the month and people are paying their rent today. I realize this as a poor person growing up, that the rent, you have to pay the rent and pay the bills, and then maybe you'll have a little bit left over. I understand.
But this book, guys, is the ideal book for this Halloween. And of course, we are not sure if we're going to be back on Saturday. We're not sure we can carry on really this show without your support. So hopefully things will pick up. In the meantime, of course, I published a couple of articles on leozagami.com. This one in particular is about the table of contents that is basically the contents of this book. So let me tell you what this book is about. It's about, of course, Jeffrey Epstein's ancestry. It's about the people who were around him and where they come from. Because if you want to understand more about Jeffrey Epstein and what happened at the highest levels of our society, and why the judiciary is not doing much, because the only people who really ended up in prison up until now have been Jeffrey Epstein, who was suicided, Jean-Luc Brunel, who procured them almost or maybe more than 1,000 minors, and that also is a guy who was suicided. And then you have Ghislaine Maxwell, who is now treated as royalty, because Ghislaine, as you will understand, has also a very special function, and she had also a very special father. I mean, Maxwell is only the front name. In reality, the real name of the family is Hawk, and this is really the speciality of this book. The fact that I want to talk today about how I came to write this book, because the book you can buy, you can purchase, you can read, you can maybe review if you like it. It's already #1 in the history of Judaism, new releases, and also in various branches of biography of espionage and all that. Now, why did I write this book? I wrote this book because for the last few years, I always had these people saying over and over again, these journalists who run their mouth 24/7 about Jeffrey Epstein. There is a level of their understanding, and then there is a level where they say, oh, well, he might have been involved with the intelligence community. He was involved with the elite. We can't access that kind of information. And so at the end, we are limited in what we know about Jeffrey Epstein, because
they tell you that what to think before you even do anything.
It's like my American flag.
Whatever they say in front of it, we're not going to find out about this.
Yeah, because of course, thinking that at the end of the day, the buckle stops with the intelligence agencies, when instead the intelligence agencies are the ones that have been used by this very powerful sect that, as you will discover in this book, is behind so many things, from the creation of theosophy to the creation of the Ordo Templi Orientis, to inspiring people like Aleister Crowley, to inspiring people like Anton LaVey. So it's like, who was actually called Anton Levi. So it's like people are encouraged by the current narrative to hate the Jews. That is the ultimate result, unfortunately. It's like
well, God is not hate. So I mean, if you're actually like hating somebody right now, you're not in the vibe of God and like where God wants you to be, because anything that's negative like that is just you're just channeling the devil. So I mean, that's what you're doing inside of your hate. So yeah, I said that.
Now, people who are familiar with the occult, esoteric, have often heard the stories about a group called the Asiatic Brethren, but they don't know that this was actually a Masonic group that was created by somebody directly related to Jacob Frank, and directly related also to a rabbi who wrote the most influential text for the Sabbatean Frankists. And nobody really knows what are the holy texts of the Sabbatean Frankists. So this book also gives you an insight on their belief system, which is very rare, because you see, Christy, in my book I mention, of course, the work of Rabbi Marvin Altenman. I mentioned the work of Gershon Scholem. Mm-hmm. And there are different kind of figures, like Gershon Scholem is an historian with a kind of a leftist academic attitude. Antelman was more of a national Zionist. Then you have the most recent figures that are studying the Sabbatean Frankists. But even in Israel, in the academic world in Israel, it's very few people who really have knowledge about these things. And so they're so relevant, though. They're so relevant. I mean, and it's like the only guy who recently has written some very boring academic works about it is a guy called Powell Macieko, who, of course, is very prepared, very academic and all that, but has a typical leftist mindset. So, yes, he acknowledges the influence, for example, of the Sabbatean Frankists in today's Israel's society, in the secularization of Judaism. But they never arrived to the conclusions which I made, because the conclusions which I made connect the very birth of the Jeffrey Epstein phenomena from the 1970s, from Donald Barr to Les Wexner, to the people who backed him all along. And then we have the long history of the Sabbatean Frankists, and people know, but who are the Sabbatean Frankists? Are they still, do they still exist? Because, you see, they actually have managed to disappear almost. It's like, at one point, even Gershon Scholem says, the last known, let's say, official document that talks about them is at the end of the 19th century. And after that, it's almost like, yeah, there is the occasional mention, but then the influence in today's Judaism is pretty strong. Now, I remember when I started to talk about the idea of doing this book, and also I was quite vocal on my social networks, particularly Facebook, about the Sabbatean Frankists. There was a Jewish guy that we both know who came to me and said, Leo, you might be misunderstood for an anti-Semite if you have this current take on things. And I say, but I'm not. I'm actually criticizing your worst enemy. And the only person who, let's say, understood that was Roseanne Barr, for example. Rosie, who really... Rosie? Well, I mean, we conducted...
I hear Roseanne Barr, and she was so funny. People don't know that you did a show with her.
Well, yes, yeah.
Before even we did a show. You did the Pew. It was very successful.
Yeah, and it was very successful. And we recently spoke, and I hope that we might be able to do a show together about this topic, because she was the one who introduced me to the Erev Rav, who was this multitude of magicians and occultists who joined Moses in the desert and the whole thing. So this is like going back far back, and it's like it precedes even the birth of the Sabbatean Frankists. The very birth of something inherently wrong within Judaism. And it was Roseanne Barr who told me, Leo, the worst enemy of the Jews is the Jews. So it's a topic that she introduced me to, that I then pursued, and I wanted to analyze in an academic way without falling into the trap of speculation, of conspiracy theories. I wanted to really bring to the, because when you are challenging something like Reform Judaism, I mean, people say, what is a Reform Judaism? Let me go, for example, here on the internet and show you something about Reform Judaism. Today, Reform Judaism is the biggest form of Judaism in the United States of America. Okay? And it's also the product of a Sabbatean Frankist mindset. It's the product of some Reform Judaism, just to explain you guys, liberal Judaism, progressive Judaism, produces people who are no longer obedient to the Mosaic laws, to their own religion and God. They choose which law, you know, when Moses went up the mountain, the Sinai, and received those laws, he was then betrayed by the Jews who were worshipping the golden calf. And that is the beginning of our story here in a way, because we have people who have betrayed Moses immediately, and they were encouraged by those magicians at the court of the Pharaoh who followed Moses. But my book is much more than that. Today, more than talking about my book, which is something I'm doing in a variety of interviews, and you will probably hear about it all over the internet in the next few weeks, is about explaining why I wanted to expose Jeffrey Epstein, because it's a topic that probably has been overly discussed. No?
Well, I think he needs to be discussed.
No, but it needs to be discussed, but
wrong way.
But my idea is not to discuss only Jeffrey Epstein, but to, you know, there's people like that basically have said Jeffrey Epstein is the product of something, but without understanding really what is it. To understand what is the product of, you have to understand his family background, where he comes from, the family background of Ghislaine Maxwell, of the father Robert Maxwell, and then you understand that of Les Wexner, of people like Steven Spielberg and many others who are part of a group called the Mega Group, to not be confused with the MAGA. And so all these people are the product of liberal Judaism, progressive Judaism, which has taken over the whole of the United States. And it has done that, flourishing from the 1860s to the 1930s in an era that is known within Judaism as the Classic Reform. And those people are the ones that, through then their own Masonic creation, which is the B'nai Brit, a paramasonic, pseudo-Masonic organization, have opened a bunch of lodges and then influenced Hollywood. I have written a book, Volume 8, Confessions of an Illuminati Volume 8, about it. So that was, but in this book, of course, I go very much into the understanding of why Judaism at one point started to embrace different tendencies, when in reality, like Antelman said, Rabbi Antelman, who wrote this excellent 2 volumes called To Eliminate the Opiate, it's like there must be only one form of Judaism, because once you distance yourself from God and from the Mosaic beliefs, and you start picking on what you want to believe, or like these progressive Jews who embrace all those New Age values, the shaman, or rather the occult or other form, they are abandoning their traditional beliefs. So,
and you get tricked into it too. You think things are good when they're not. You know, they tell you things are good and they're not good. So, and when you see them on commercials and people are promoting this stuff on the TV, you know, it's just terrible. You know, they promote this evil stuff and then you pick it up and do it. And then you're in bad with God. And God goes away. And then you're stuck there feeling like shit. And that's what happens. It happened to me. It happened to me. So I know because from personal experience, it happened to me. So that's it.
No, that's absolutely true. In Judaism, you have the halakha. The halakha is the collective body of Jewish religious laws that is derived from the written Torah. And these beliefs can, of course, have minor differences among Ashkenazis, Mizrahi Jews, Sephardi Jews, Yemenite, Ethiopian Jews, and whatnot, which are, of course, part of the varied world of the Jewish diaspora. When the Zionist movement came along, as we know it with Theodor Herzl, and here I have, of course, a couple of these are like books really sent by God, because I found them literally in the trash, in the rubbish, you know. But I mean, it is gold, which was given to me by God to understand, because this is the Encyclopedia of Zionism. And in these 2 volumes, you have everything you ever need to know about Israel. You know?
I know. He was like, I'm going down. I saw it because, this one of our neighbors has all these kind of books. And so he said,
just throw them away.
All these books to the trash. And I'm like, no, please don't go garbage picking. Please don't do it. Well, don't let anybody see you. And especially don't let him see you going away with you. But he did do it. And he didn't care what I said. He needed these books. So.
I definitely needed these books. But when you see this guy, you know, this gentleman here I talk about in my book, is a guy called Theodor Herzl. He was a journalist. He was, of course, a secularized Jew. You have to understand that the Jews went through what is known as the Jewish Enlightenment, which is the Ashkalah. I talk about it in my new book, which you can all get. This book will be a great way. And I tell you guys, we're selling it for a ridiculous price, because, I mean, I saw books that cost.
You bought books that
cost a fortune compared to this. Now, if you can go down there, Christy, next to the Sophia Loren book there is that little booklet of a guy who I know personally, who is a nice gentleman, who is a nice author, anthropologist of sorts. There, Christy, down. And the first thing next to the Sophia Loren one on the left. Okay, now.
This one?
Yes. Now, guys, I want to just... How much we are selling this for?
I think it's $15.99 or $16.99.
Okay.
Not more than $16.99.
How much did I pay for this little booklet?
A lot.
$16.
Yeah, but it's only like this. There's like nothing to it. It's probably less than 100 pages.
It's guys, I want to just give you a comparison. They cost the same. And look at the, you know, and people are actually buying this book, which is based on, of course, Redemption Through Sin, on the Sabbateans, on also the Jacob Frank. I mean, it is about the Sabbatean Frankist. It is a book that definitely, I mean, it's a nice little booklet. It's not really a book, because how many pages is it? Can you go check out how many pages? But I mean, I just wanted to, Robert Sefer, I mean,
oh, goodness gracious. It has 67 pages.
Okay, so 67 pages. This book is a book of 283 pages. 283 pages. And it costs the same. Now, that means we are not making that much profit.
We don't anyway. We never make. We make as least as we can.
Okay. Of course, we don't know how long we're going to keep this book for this price, because if we see that the sales are very limited, we're going to be forced in putting the price up, because if it sells really very little.
I'm all right. You know, you have to wait and see what happens.
Okay.
You have to wait till at least payday for people.
But in any case, this book here has a lot more substance. In any case. And it has also...
Your book has more substance than a 600 volume book on this subject. That's what I say. 600 page book on this.
Well, because I definitely condense.
You couldn't find anything.
I mean, this book has almost what is this? What number is that?
283.
No, this number here
is 594.
594 citation, things, sources, academic, proven sources, credible testimonies.
I will say that both him and I never worked so hard on one book and put so much attention into one book than this book.
Absolutely. So, and when you, for example, go through, I mean, in this book, you understand things that are absolutely critical for the understanding of the Jeffrey Epstein saga. Like, for example, the fact that they were blessed by John Paul II. Nobody understands that until you understand all the connections of the Sabbatean Frankists with Poland. The fact that you have these connections between the Sabbatean. Why you have the name Frankenstein? Frankenstein, in reality, is something that needs to be understood also esoterically. The name Frankenstein, and Dr. Frankenstein himself, in a way, inspired Jeffrey Epstein. You have a lot of of course, a lot of insights on what Jeffrey Epstein was trying to achieve as a novel Dr. Frankenstein, but also why he built that temple in Little St. James that was really weird for many people. So this book opens you up to a variety of figures, a variety of documents of very much of great importance. Like when you see this guy, Dr. Falk, you say, well, who is this guy? What kind of relevance did he have in history? Or this other guy, Moses S., which was basically the guy who, in a way, introduced Karl Marx to the very principles of communism. And that should be like, that should be already groundbreaking in itself. The fact that the Ordo Templi Orientis, which is the organization which then later Alistair Crowley took over, inspired and actually in their own official writings said that they claimed a lineage and a direct connection with the Asiatic Brethren, which were brought up and co-founded by a direct relative of Jacob Frank. We have many things in this book that the secret roots of Jewish secularism and the Holocaust. I mean, millions of people died, and the guy who actually sent them to the concentration camps was partly Jewish and Sabbatean Frankist. This is something that, of course, the fact that we have today Israel as the ultimate product of a Sabbatean state, but at the same time, we cannot condemn Israel when everybody in Europe and all the secret societies in Europe worked in a way to push these people towards going to Israel rather than going somewhere else. I mean, there was a moment in time when they came up with the transfer agreement in which, guys, the Nazis made a deal with the Zionists, with the labor Zionists. And when the Jews were trying to come to America instead, they will be sent back, and then in the end they will be sent to Israel. So, we have to understand a few things. We have to understand the basis of the Jewish Enlightenment, the people who created this background, which ultimately culminated in the people who gave Jeffrey Epstein the possibility to be Jeffrey Epstein, who gave him that fantastic building in New York, who gave him the possibility of running around and doing things in his island of Little St. James or in Santa Fe. It's not like...
But it was planned.
It was all planned.
It was a plan.
And I mean, we are discussing here a secret sect which was once more public, but then went more and more underground, and then now is rarely discussed by anybody. And, but there has been people who have discussed rarely what the Sabbatean Frankists are about. But the Sabbatean Frankists had also rabbinic opponents. They had actually people who fought them within Judaism. And in this book, I also wanted to explain the great misunderstanding about the Ashkenazis, the Khazars. We always talk about the Khazar, the conspiracy of the Khazar Jews. What are these Khazars? And that also needs to be explained. So, according to Isaac Luria is also a very important figure, because Isaac Luria is regarded as a pivotal figure, a groundbreaking figure within Jewish mysticism. He is the leading rabbi that in a way has inspired Orthodox Jews, and is commonly known in religious circles as Hari, or Hari HaKadosh, or Arizal. And it was from Isaac Luria that the Kabbalistic knowledge started to emanate, and then that Kabbalistic knowledge unfortunately came into the wrong hands, and we have not only the Jews to blame for that, but also the Christian Puritans. So there is, connections with the Christian Puritans, the ones that came with the Mayflower here to the United States of America, that we are about to celebrate in
that's
our
why they screwed up
Thanksgiving.
the Indians?
No, but you
came over here and stole their land.
No, I mean, the thing is that there is all kinds of explanations that were given. Even, we discussed recently the Mormons, we discussed the Jehovah's Witnesses, we discussed, the ideas of the Indians being the lost tribes of the Jews, the lost tribe of the Jews. But, people don't know, but there is also British Israelism, which was something that arose when the English Puritans were so, let's say, taken by this knowledge that was coming from Judaism, that decided that, they had to be the lost tribe of Israel. They were the lost tribe of... I want to show you guys this book. Yesterday I showed it to Michael Jago, and it's a book from the end of the 1800s, the Anglo-Saxon Israel, the Saxon race. British Israelism was very popular, guys. And what is the British Israelism? It's about getting the English to believe that they were the lost tribe of Israel. And Christy, please read this hymn to Israel that is contained in this book, which, by the way, is a book by a guy, 9 lectures by Reverend W.H. Paul.
Okay. A hymn to Israel. Hail, all hail, mysterious nation, lot of God's inheritance. Sad through long thy situation, see a brighter day advance. Clouds and storms have overspread thee, tossed they bark, disheveled, torn, the hand that chastened led thee. Sink, thou couldn't not by it born. Did God's vengeance overtake thee? 'Twas in sorrow, not in hate. Still he purposes to make thee above all others nations great. Hark, the promised Israel, hear it. Hear the voice of Jacob's rock. I, who scattered thee, will gather as a shepherd doth his flock.
Quite well written, no? It's like they made some poetry out of it. It is a series of lectures here that were given in which basically even Druidism was seen as a compound of Judaism and Baal worship. And for those who know a little bit about Baal worship, that's not really a positive thing, but check out here.
What did that say? Druidism.
And but here, what it says, a compound of Judaism and Baal worship. And of course, Druidism as a... Please read here how they attempted all this, this British Israelism was born because of the people who were, of the secretary of Oliver Cromwell called Sadler. Sadler went to this guy who was the leading rabbi of his time, and he was so enthused. John Sadler was this millennial thinker, this member of parliament, and he was a political advisor to Oliver Cromwell, who took over by beheading the king for a brief time, took over England and transformed it into a republic. It didn't last that long. But in any case, he decided to connect with a guy called Manasseh ben Israel, who was this Dutch-based Jewish founder of the first Hebrew printing press named Emet Meretti Sama. And he established in Amsterdam this printing press, and Sadler, Cromwell's secretary, was so impressed by him that he even argued that the British had a special link to the Jews as one of the lost tribes of Israel. In particular, this is
fourth lecture.
Yeah, this fourth lecture gives us even a link with Druidism. Just like a couple of paragraphs.
In the first centuries, our God was pleased to manifest himself to his children. No sooner had they persisted in wrongdoing than he withdrew his presence from them, warning them of the consequences of their own. Having willfully sinned, they began woefully to wander. Under the conscious sense of want, they wanted to worship the sun, moon, and stars as the best representative they had of him, who had so often appeared to their fathers under the emblem of fire. As early as the days of Abraham, we read that Terah, Abraham's father, worshipped other gods. This fact gives us a very forcible reason why Abraham was called to get out of his country and from his kindred and from his father's house into another land.
Sorry, Christy, audio sounds muffled. She could use a mic. Well, we have a mic, microphone.
What? I'm doing my best. I can try again. I'm sorry.
No. But I want to check the volume levels. It seems to be
maybe
all
I should
fine.
read it again.
Okay.
I can read it slower and more.
How is the sound, guys? Are we having problems? So somebody says, I thought Anglo-Saxons were true Israel. Well, because it's the product of British Israelism, which I explain in my book. British Israelism is still popular to this day amongst Freemasons and Rosicrucians. And all this happened because, like I said, somebody like Sadler, who was the secretary of Oliver Cromwell, went to this guy who at the time was called the ambassador of the Jews, and this guy then became very influential on the father of Sabbatai Zei, Mordecai Zei. Now today,
Mordecai?
Yeah, Mordecai. Today we have a lot of people who discuss the Sabbatean Frankist, even at an academic level, even Gershon Scholem, the late Gershon Scholem, who was this historian, very renewed historian, also expert in Kabbalah, who talked very much about all the various twists and turns of the Sabbatean Frankists, never really discussed so much Mordecai Zevi. Maybe he dedicated to him a few lines. But Mordecai Zevi is very important because he was working for the Puritans in England, the guys who gave birth to British Israelism. So please, Christine.
This fact gives us very forcible reason why Abraham... Oh, I read that.
Yes.
Where am I? Job was contemporary with Abram, and he alludes to the worship of the heavenly bodies. He calls chapter, what is that?
Okay.
Oh my God, your book is breaking.
Yeah, let's not break the book because it's a very old book, and now it says here the Hebrews had 3 festivals which they regularly observed, namely the Passover, Pentecost, and the Pass of the Tabernacles. Now they related to the Druids, and he says, so the Druids held 3 great annual festivals corresponding in time exactly to the great annual festival established among the Hebrews. So for them, there was a very detailed explanation. And this is not the only book about, let's say, British Islamists, because I have another book here. Sorry, guys. We have a lot of books here, and sometimes they tend to fall apart. But here I have another couple of books. They're all big books, so they tend to... These are 2 books that were very influential also with a guy called Kenneth Grant, secretary of Aleister Crowley for a period. It's called A Book of the Beginnings by a gentleman known as Gerald Massey, who was also in charge of the Druids. Somebody's saying here, which book do you discuss British Israelis? This one. This one. That's why in the end you have Weinstein, Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, everybody partying at the Royal Lodge. And you have, of course, the Rothschild being nobilitated and so on. All this is explained in The Rise and Fall of a Frankist Monster, exposing Jeffrey Epstein and the most powerful Jewish sect in the world. Going back to this book, The Book of the Beginnings, here you have a very in-depth explanation on how Hebrew and the Hebrew language is connected all the way to England, to and it's very complex book, but it's a comparative study here in the Book of the Beginnings, which is worth mentioning here. In fact, you see hieroglyphs in Britain, and you have, like, I'm gonna maybe get Christy to read a paragraph here, so you understand also how it seems very important, very relevant, because people don't know really much about British Israelis today.
Okay, hieroglyphs in Britain. In his treatise of the New Manneries and Odd of Scotus, the ancient chronicler Bowen's says the old inhabitants used the rites and manners of the Egyptians from whom they took from the beginning. In all their secret business, they did not write with common letters used among other people, but with ciphers and figures of beasts made in manners of letters. He is unable to tell us how the secret of this crafty method of writing was lost, but affirms that it existed and has perished. We know the principle of ideographic writing was extant in what are termed the tree alphabets, in which the sprigs of trees form the signs. Taliesin alludes to this kind of writing when he says, I know every reed or twig in the cave of the chief diviner, and I love the tops of trees with the points well connected. These were the symbolic sprigs used for divination as ideographs before they were reduced to phonetic value.
And this is, I have a lot of books. I have another book over there that maybe we can pick up. Here we will go in a bunch of subjects that they were very dear to my late friend Jordan Maxwell, who made some very in-depth research in this kind of things. In any case, what Gerald Massey is proving is that, of course, the Jews are a product, in a way, also of the Egyptians, that there were parallels between the Book of Exodus and the Book of the Dead. And all this, of course, though, brings us then to the actual confirmation that there are parallels also with Druidism, with British symbolical customs and Egyptian naming. I repeat, all this is, of course, part of the legacy of British Israelism, which is still dear to many. In volume 1 of my Confessions, I discuss a manifesto by the Società Rosicruciana in Anglia, in which they were talking about the fact still today that they feel like the English, but even the Scottish, are somehow the lost tribe of Israel. So this really stayed for a long time in their history. But in any case, let's go back to the Sabbatean Frankist and their legacy, also with the black aristocracy, the black nobility as is known, that nobility which is close to the Vatican. In the black booklets of Epstein, these 2 booklets filled with names, we have, and this is what you will find in my book, you will find names of people who are not commonly known by the majority of the folks out there, but they are very influential, and they represent that direct link that the Jewish Sabbatean Frankists have with the nobility and with the black nobility also. In fact, it was a Rothschild who married with, the Rothschild were nobilitated, and of course they married also with Christians. The same happened though when Jacob Frank became in charge of the situation, declaring himself the reincarnation of Shabbatai Zevi. Initially, he wanted his followers that had converted to the Catholic world, Frank, to his deal with the Jesuits. In this book, the Jesuits have a very important, role, because they are when the Jesuits were persecuted, they actually took refuges in those areas, which then became Sabbatean Frankist hotspots in Eastern Europe, and it's not by chance. When Jacob Frank made a deal with the Catholic Church, initially, like I said, he didn't let his followers marry with other Catholics, but then he thought, okay, let's bring them, let's take this to our advantage. So what he did was to get those people from influential families to become their godfathers and to take their surnames. So suddenly, from a Jewish surname, they went into an aristocratic surname. Yeah. And they became crypto-Jews, but much more deceitful than the ones of Shabbatai Zevi, who simply were outwards Muslims and continued their Sabbatean rituals in private. They actually mixed up with the European nobility. And that's how they arrived all the way to Vienna, which, of course, was the epicenter of the Austro-Hungarian Empire in a very important moment of time. That's where the grandson of the founder of the Rothschild dynasty, Solomon Rothschild, became very influential. And not only him. Like I said, the Sabbatean Frankists are divided in Sabbatean and Frankist, because the Sabbateans were generated mainly in Turkey by Shabbatai Zevi, even after he renounced publicly his Judaism in favor of Islam. But then after, Jacob Frank was more deceitful, like somebody's saying, than Shabbatai Zevi, because he didn't want to actually only claim to be the reincarnation of Shabbatai Zevi. He could have done that if he stayed in Thessaloniki, if he stayed within the Ottoman Empire borders. No, he wanted to go to Poland, to Podolia, to Ukraine, to what was known as Galicia, to all those areas, Moldova, modern Moldova, Hungary, all those areas, even Germany, where then the followers of Frankism became very influential also for the banking system. Because the banking system today has their legacy in Frankfurt, as I explained. That legacy in Frankfurt gets us all the way to where we are today. And that legacy is not only the Rothschild, but many other families that I list together with the Rothschild, who of course gave their support to Jacob Frank when he came and arrived, in this pompous fashion, received as almost a god when he arrived as the Messiah in Frankfurt, and then made his base in Offenbach. So this is really the revelations that we're making today. They are obviously scratching the surface of a book which is almost 300 pages and that needs to be read. But this book, as you can see here in the background, you have all those images. It's a book that connects the past, the present, and the future. Because today we have two political parties in the United States, Democrats and Republicans, who are both compromised by a sect nobody's even mentioning, even amongst the people. The Jesuits are the controllers, as we know, of the spiritual world. But the Sabbatean Frankists are the controls of your pockets. They are the controllers of your banking system. They are the controls of your credit cards. They are the controllers of your debt. They are the ones who are also pushing this new world that Hollywood has presented us, and that has become more and more woke, more and more leftist, and all these non-values, all these
So is the cryptocurrency just meant to make people fall?
A cryptocurrency, of course, was something that in the end it's an instrument. It's an instrument, but who is behind these Jewish entrepreneurs? In this book, I also explain the history of the B'nai Brit. I explain the history of B'nai Brit has founded lodges that influence Hollywood, but also influence the financial world. There is people that, of course, I discuss in this book. There are people, I talk about John Elkann. He was there at the Oval Office in May with Trump.
Put a picture of him.
Who Trump said he comes from a very influential, powerful dynasty. And nobody knows what he's talking about. Trump knows the truth. Trump knows there is certain limits to what he can do or not do, like every other politician. The politicians, you see, the Jesuits and the Sabbatean Frankists, I always said that, by the way, are the ones who rule the system. And they rule the secret societies, they rule the think tanks, they rule all the political parties, they rule everything. But for the first time, I want to dedicate, I dedicated a book, my last book, the last installment of my confession was dedicated, of course, to the Jesuits. This book here, instead, I wanted to dedicate to the Sabbatean Frankists.
Well, no, you dedicated this book to the victims.
No, dedicated in the sense of the content, not dedicated in the sense of the dedication.
Because you did a really nice dedication to the victims of pedophilia.
But the victims of Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah.
Jeffrey Epstein. Because, dedicated to the victims of Jeffrey Epstein. This is
I thought that was really good.
Because, you see, the Sabbatean Frankists have influence within the occult world, but they have always been monitored by the Jesuits in every step they took. When, for example, Madame Blavatsky died, the Jesuits immediately infiltrated the Theosophical Society and took over the Theosophical Society.
Is that why the king was there praying with the Pope?
Now we have, of course, King Charles, who recently has gone back into the fold of the Catholic Church almost. They have recognized his importance, his relevance as a king. This didn't happen for the last 500 years.
Isn't he supposed to be like some kind of like different religion?
Well, no. Of course, the Anglican religion was the Church of England, one of the first reasons for the Reformation and for the birth also of the Counter-Reformation and of the Jesuit warfare on them, which I have discussed profusely in volume 12 of my Confessions. But in any case, the fact that after Oliver Cromwell, the Jews were reallowed in England, and those Jews, of course, not necessarily all the Jews are Zionist or want to necessarily, because Zionism in a way was instrumental for the Sabbatean Frankists. They needed the black, the nobility, the aristocracy, both the black nobility but also the British nobility wanted at one point these Jews to go back to Israel. And like all Christians for the last, starting from the Puritans onwards, their intention is simply to bring back the Jews so the scriptures can manifest, so the Messiah can come back, so they can prove themselves right with the return of Jesus. At the same time, of course, the Jews have a different idea because they never recognized Jesus in the first place. And Jesus was also never seen as a legitimate rabbi who was part of a legitimate rabbinic school. So, in the end, the Sabbatean Frankists, though, didn't really have a spiritual legacy because they were just spewing lies, and their concept of digging deep into sin, so from those sparkle, they can redeem their sins.
That's horrible.
And then they can, they can manifest through sin. They can get their messianic age to come closer and closer to us. It's definitely a perverse idea. I mean, in my book, I explained also the fact that there was a very important text that was, it's a text that outside of Judaism very few people know about, but it is the holy text of the Sabbatean Frankists, and it's written by a rabbi who himself, Jonathan Habesh. This rabbi I want to show you because he looks like a typical character.
He looks like a monster.
No, but this guy here is the guy who has written the most holy text of the Sabbatean Frankist creed, Rabbi Jonathan Habesh. And he was a very, very respected rabbi. So today, even today, the Jews will never admit that Jonathan Habesh was, but there was this controversy, the Sabbatean controversy, in which he was accused of being an heretical figure. And he was fought by rabbis who understood the danger of all this. So there was people within there were people within the Jewish community who fought this heresy over and over again. And I tried to explain how we got to this point in which you have a guy like Ehud Barak, like a prime minister of the labor Zionist of Israel, who ends up being a criminal, a complete criminal, who rapes Virginia Giuffre in the worst possible way, in a sadistic way, in a way that Virginia Giuffre has just announced in her posthumous biography, and that has shocked the world. Of course, even in her biography, they didn't reveal fully the name, but it's revealed within her own testimony with the FBI. The text that granted this perversion a holy kind of role was known as the Bavo Yahom Elahin, and this text was written by Rabbi Jonathan Habesh. And this text is like their guide to their to the perversions, and it is quite incredible that today very few people know about this book and know about the content of this book. As you can see, there is, the unimaginable writings of, they don't, sometimes they pronounce them like this, sometimes they pronounce them in another way, but this makes you understand that Judaism and the rabbis are hiding a lot of their sins, a lot of their dirty secrets, because they don't want to present anomalies within the religion. They want to present themselves as always perfect.
Yeah, sure. Nobody's perfect. That's for sure. Nobody's perfect.
So nobody's perfect. And you see, after years of
You want to be perfect, you can be a robot.
well,
and they're not perfect.
In this book, I explained that Jeffrey Epstein was also behind the creation of Sophia the robot. It's almost like Jeffrey Epstein was mimicking the creation of Frankenstein, the monster that was inspired by the Sabbatean Frankist, as we said, and was also mimicking the creation of a golem. A golem is also an important part of Jewish magic, of Jewish folklore. Is a creature formed out of a lifeless substance, such as dust or earth, that is brought to life by ritual incantations and sequences of Hebrew letters. And I explain in this book the connections between the golem, Frankenstein, and ultimately Jeffrey Epstein. So I hope that people today have appreciated this brief presentation. Of course, it's very brief. It's just summarizing a few points from the book. I think that once you read this book, you will understand the relevance for today's world, the fact that we are being played. One side is played against the other, but in reality, Bill Clinton was just as friendly to Jeffrey Epstein as Trump was.
So they're all in it together.
They're all in it together.
I figured that out a few months ago, but yeah, they're all in it together.
And Jeffrey Epstein was creating also, of course, a whole race of little Epsteins through his DNA. He wanted to seed the whole world. I think I think, guys, that I want to end up this presentation with Christy reading simply what is written in the back cover of this book.
Okay. The Rise and Fall of a Frankist Monster, Exposing Jeffrey Epstein and the Most Powerful Jewish Sect in the World. The rise and fall of Jeffrey Epstein and his associate Ghislaine Maxwell has been talked about in every way possible in the last few years, but this is the first time the historic, social, political, and religious background of this monster and his ancestry and the key players of his network of powerful and well-connected individuals are used by the author to introduce the most comprehensive analysis on the powerful and secretive Sabbatean Frankist. Jewish sect which originated from the Sabbatean movement in the 17th century by rejecting Jewish law and norms in favor of new doctrines which would damage not only Judaism but all the Abrahamic religions. Starting with the golem, the legendary creature of Jewish folklore, which inspired the Frankenstein Gothic novel based on Frankism, all the way to the infiltration of Freemasonry and the present banking cartel, to the secret roots of Jewish secularism and liberal Judaism. We can finally shed new light on the origins of the Holocaust and the establishment of Zionism and the Sabbatean state. This is the ultimate eye-opener from Leo Zagami to really understand the modern state of Israel and what Jeffrey Epstein stood for without falling into the trap of anti-Semitism.
Now, guys, this book, of course, is like I said at the beginning of the show, a labor of love. It takes a long time to put together a book. It's, of course, a very hard work that we do. You know, me and Christy have to put together a book. It's really a labor of very love, but also very intense work that is done. At times, you know, we argue with each other because we like this book to be perfect. And then in the end, it comes out and it's almost like I'm not saying it's almost like having a baby, but almost.
Oh my God, no, it's not. But it's not like having a baby. A baby, it really hurts.
It really hurts. But it's still very, 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 intense, let's say. Okay,
It's intense.
It's intense, and we had all kinds of things happening, technical anomalies to get this book together. At the end, Amazon was giving us so many problems. I don't know if these problems were there to start with.
Well, they happened to go
just
down right before we were publishing, so that wasn't helpful.
Yes,
they still have their problems.
Amazon has a lot of AI problems. But in any case, now we are out with this book, and this book is, I think, very much a book that you need to get together with Virginia's Giuffre book to really have the truth about, if you want to complete, all aspects of the Jeffrey Epstein saga, you need to get this book. And
she might have read it and maybe not felt so lost.
Yes, because this book then explains you how they constructed. Now, today we didn't really discuss that, but that is for you to read, how Jeffrey Epstein was literally put together, constructed, and became both the Dr. Frankenstein as well as his own monster. And in the end, he also was, of course, dropped the moment in which it became a problem for the elite that today tries to distance itself. Only a few hours ago, King Charles, of course, has renewed the fact that Prince Andrew is losing all his titles. Even the title of Prince seems to be now in discussion, even if that is by birthright, like I also explain in my book. It's a title that he might still be able to use within his own privileged environments, But there is a lot of people who have aided and abetted Jeffrey Epstein during his career as a criminal, but also a mad scientist of sorts. And this book wants to explain you who those people are.
It will.
And
it doesn't want to, it will.
The mega group, the Jewish study group behind, that raised in the 90s, from the middle of the 80s, Lex Wexner, before that, Donald Barr, they are all connected. They are all connected to the Sabbatean Frankist. And I think that once you read this book, you will finally have a picture. It might not be... How you say? I mean, after you read this book, Christy, because of course you edited. What was your thought? Your final thought about this whole thing?
It made sense. It makes sense. It puts the pieces together, and it made more sense to me of why people do the things they do and why they're so horrible.
The missing links. Somebody's asking, how are you guys still alive? Well, because we fight and
we're not scared. We're not scared. We just come here. We're not scared.
We had to flee Europe. We had to leave Italy. And now, of course, we are here in the United States of America. I even changed my own citizenship to continue my work as a truth seeker, as an author, as an investigative journalist. And I will do it, whatever the cost. I had to renounce to a lot of things in my life, and I'm not going to
pushed by,
I'm not going to list what I lost already, but what I've gained is, of course, the respect of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people who have read my books around the world, because my books have been read by hundreds of thousands of people in different languages all over the world. And I think that with Christy, we have a mission here to accomplish. And like I showed you earlier on, it's not a mission based on money. Otherwise, this book will probably cost 4 times as much as this book. Instead, this book is actually costing less than this little booklet.
With all the respect, to keep it going. That's all. We really don't want a bunch of money. We really don't. So we don't. We just want enough to be able to do this show.
And we would like to continue to do this show. But we will continue if you have your encouragement. And your encouragement has to be either purchasing these books.
I'm telling you, I want to say something. I guess, as far... I'm not even going to say anything because there are people that donate and I appreciate them. So
the little you donate, remember, guys, we appreciate it. And we are very grateful for that.
No,
but unfortunately,
I don't know.
It's becoming increasingly difficult for us.
It is difficult. But I mean, we are grateful. I mean, if we can't come back here, we can't because we can't. And we're just not here, not because we don't want to or we gave up. It's because we can't. It's not because Leo Zagami disappeared or where have you been after we come back after a few months. Oh, where have you been? I haven't seen you in so long. Where did you disappear to? Leo Zagami doesn't disappear. You guys just don't care. So that's what ends up happening. The channel went down and, we lost so many people when they took away our channel. And those people
one channel, they took away 17 channels.
I mean, they took 17 away, but it's hard to get those people back after you lose them.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
I mean, as you lose people.
But also, I'm checking out the situation and I hope it gets better. But it seems like, I sent out a lot of press releases.
People are scared.
Press releases about this book.
Nobody replied.
Very few people have replied up until now. I tell you, the people who replied, they're my really close friends. We have Michael Jacob, of course.
He's a really strong character.
Strong character, very good guy. Professor Amamoto, Darrell Amamoto, very good guy.
Wonderful man.
An exceptional academic with a big heart. And I will be on his show also in a couple of weeks. But many other people, and I want to make names because I'm not here to make, it's.
I mean, they're sitting there on their podcast wanting to know the truth, and there's the truth.
They are scared. Now, I hope that somebody gives me a break and invites me on their show because they're not scared. And there is, like I said, some close friends who in the next few days will have me on their shows. But I hope that some big shots will give me a break and give me the possibility of presenting this book because this is, I repeat, a original and unique perspective on the Epstein case that nobody else has given. I mean, they have published a bunch of books on Jeffrey Epstein. They have written thousands of articles about Jeffrey Epstein. They have done thousands of shows and podcasts about Jeffrey Epstein.
That's all you hear about, really.
But nobody has touched on the anthropological, historical, and religious factors that have created Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, who eventually get blessed by a future saint of the Catholic Church. And they don't want to explain why Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein were received in private audience by John Paul II. Okay. I tried to get in contact with Candace Owens, but she seems not interested, at least at the moment. Let's see.
People, I don't know. I'm not even going to say. No, I'm not going to judge people.
No worries.
I'm grateful for what we have, and I'm grateful that we were here this long, and I was grateful to get to know you guys, and hopefully we'll get to come back.
Yeah, I mean,
that's all.
I hope that I can continue I mean, this book is also particularly relevant for people in Israel, for my friends in Israel who are watching us from Israel. I know you're watching.
Hi, Lord.
And many others. For all the people from the Jewish communities around the world, this book is relevant to you, and it explains why there is so much anti-Semitism in the world today. Having said that, bless you all from me and Christy. We hope to see you soon, depending on the sales of the books. And of course, depending
mostly on the sales of the books.
Yeah, because I mean, I don't care. I mean, I care, of course, about the donations if they come in, but without
it's not paying for, $250 or $500 doesn't pay for our bills,
No, but in any case, if we don't have either the sale of the books or the donation, guys, I'm going to have to, unfortunately, find myself another job.
I'll be working at Sephora, probably in Palm Springs, so I'll see you there. You can find all your beauty supplies and wonderful things to make yourself beautiful, and then I'll be doing something very fun.
Okay. If you like to do that, no problem.
I do.
I don't know what I'm gonna do.
But I'm not gonna be on this internet. That's for sure. I'll be way off of it. I don't want anything to do with these internets.
let's hope that God instead blesses us with a bestseller and blesses us with the possibility of continuing.
No, let's
in our
hope that
mission.
God blesses them, because we are already blessed. Every day that we wake up, we feel God's blessing all around us.
Absolutely.
So if you are able to understand this book and recognize it, it's a blessing. So
Thank
you are blessed if you know.
Thank you so much, guys. See you hopefully next week.
Bye.
In that time, our world has taken so many steps in the wrong direction.
And thank you to Vincenzo Viceversa, who is the author of this fantastic track, but also the author of this fantastic, amazing book cover. That it's really the best book cover for this Halloween. So, I mean, for this Halloween, you need to get a copy of The Rise and Fall of a Frankist Monster, the Epstein and the most powerful new sect in the world. Thank you very much. Enjoy the sound, enjoy the knowledge, and this is...
technology, social organization, dehumanization. technology, social organization,